No, time to wake up. Oh, supposed to be paying these bills that they just drop on me. Your insurance covers everything, and then they send me a bill almost $200. Then I get another bill from another medical outfit. You owe $200 to us. And they said, I've been asking every time I've been in the office. No, you don't know anything. No, you don't know anything. No, you don't know anything. Well, this time you probably ought to pay something. Okay, so I pay something. No, you don't know anything. Here's another one, almost $200 for that bill. No, that one's less, like 135 or something. These people are messed up. I'm supposed to pay $168 for a $200 brace that they charge my insurance company $800. And you can find a similar thing on eBay, same company, same style thing, only not the same size and not the proper leg, for $150. Somebody found out on Instagram and Facebook, I've seen posts on each one that said the same thing. If they paid outright something for cash, it was less than $1,000. If they had submitted it to the insurance company, the copay was someplace around $2,000. The insurance company was billed multiple thousands. You want to figure that one out? Yeah, I know. I've got a wild hair there. Been there for years. Well, it's dry in here. You know why? What is it? 23rd of May. And we've had a wood stove going for 2 full days. Probably 2.5. Yeah, it's been that kind of spring. Well, I want to talk about spark plugs. Yeah, I know that's like my commercial of the medical stuff. Watch out. Ask questions. Spark and plugs. Well, there you are, the very simplest spark plug you can get. This is an RJ19 LMC. No, I forgot what the MC is. That's probably something stupid, but I think it means there's no ribs here. That's normally the old spark plugs had ribs on them. 2 reasons. One of them is to help the cap stay on better, and the other is it's a longer distance for moisture to create a carbon track. It used to be critical. Now our caps are a little bit better. Not that much if you buy them aftermarket. But other than this is your standard lawnmower plug. What's the equivalent? J17LM, J19LM, of course, J8, CJ8, they're all equivalent spark plug types. So there's another one, DJ8J, that might be a similar heat range, but is a totally different spark plug. It's a little peanut plug with a tapered seat. Now, these all have washers on them. So that's your typical spark plug. Now, on a Ford, you're going to find a Ford that looks similar to this. There's your tapered seat spark plug. Now, what is this? This is a high-energy ignition spark tester. No center electrode at all. The spark comes up out of the porcelain to the top, jumps across to the side. 50,000 volts, let me tell you. That's your tester. Well, there's normally a clip on the side of it so that it looks like this, but the spot weld didn't hold very well. This thing I bought a long time ago. This is your standard spark tester. This, if I remember correctly, is 15 to 20,000 volts is what this will tell you is your ignition system's putting out. So you have to give a pretty good pull, but usually chainsaws and other things, you give your nice little yank on them and they spin over fast enough to jump this without much trouble at all. But then again, this is closer to the upper end of your normal spark on your small engines. What I've used for many, many years, and this is just to give you an idea what the spark is there. This is a Mercury surface gap out of their old 20 horse from the 70s, mid 70s even. It's an L78V, Lincoln 78 Victor, and that's just the surface gap. They designed the surface gap so that it doesn't foul. It just, if all the way around, it can fire if it wants to. Rare occasions you can find 2 sparks coming out of these if you have enough energy out of your ignition system. But this is, I've had this spark plug for decades, and obviously I've had a couple of different clips on the thing. This has worked very well. However, you have to read the spark. If it's a nice wide blue spark, you're good. If it's a narrow blue spark or yellow, bad. But you have to read the spark, because this standard spark out of an old Briggs & Stratton will jump that thing without yanking them too hard. But that's also another way you have to test it. You put one of these on there and pull slowly. So this is the best tester. Give them a good nice pull and see if it jumps this good and clearly. Now the other equivalent that you can build similar to this one, believe it or not, I made some measurement. This is a D21 Champion spark plug. Any equivalent plug, 486 I think it is, in Autolite. That wide gap is similar. It's very close, within like 10 thousandths or something. And if you can jump this wide gap, you're equivalent of this one. So that's something else that you can do for your own spark tester. I think I only paid $10 for this thing off of Amazon. I bought a couple of them. They're well worth it. We use them constantly. Why? Well, you've got the wide gap on there for one main reason. You have an engine that's barking back through the carburetor, but everything seems okay. Plug this sucker in. See if it'll jump that gap. And if you're cranking your engines over, which is V-twins and such, one cylinder will fire up, and then you can look at this. Now, if you have bad spark plugs, this is something that I have done on engines many times with this one. You're going to hook your spark plug wire here, and you're going to clip this here. Well, that's insane. Yes and no. What happens is it has to jump this gap from the center electrode to here, jump across here, so you have to keep this thing clear or tape it off. And then it jumps the spark gap here, which is usually 25 to 30 thousandths. What did it do? It has to jump this gap and jump this gap, so your voltage went sky high. And what the idea is that in here, in this spark plug, if there's a short in there, a ground short of sorts, carbon track or whatever, there'll be enough volts flying in there that'll jump the carbon track and the spark plug gap. Yeah, I got to look where I'm working here because it's all backwards. So it'll jump both gaps, increases voltage, higher voltage jumps here, and also jumps the carbon track or the short inside the plug, and it starts running. You know you got a bad plug immediately. You don't even have to do anything else. You immediately know your ignition system is good because you're jumping two gaps, and this gap is small enough that it isn't going to affect much if you have a solid ignition system. And then all of a sudden your engine starts running good. You're set. What do? Usually I don't have this thing with me. That's something I use here at the shop. So what do? I take the spark plug cap, pull it up so that it has to jump from the contact to the tip of the spark plug. And you'll have to change your distances. And if all of a sudden, boom, it takes off and starts running smooth, replace your plug. And the other one is check the tip of that wire, because sometimes that can be a problem. But a majority of the time, it's a bad spark plug. So that'll give you an idea. Testing outright, general test, testing together. Now, the last but not least, yeah, that might give you, on some of the newer ignition systems, you might be able to use this. Hard thing is finding it. IST number 1. You'll see it backwards there. IST 1. Okay, now what's the other one? You want to change your gap. Well, on every lawnmower I've ever worked on throughout my entire life, I've set them all at 30 thousandths because I don't care what the book says. 30 thousandths gives you a bigger kernel. What is the spark plug factory set at? There it is. What's it at? Just over 20 thousandths. The bottom of that reed is 20 thousandths. You're seeing everything backwards. You see where I marked the yellow? That's 30. That's where the little bugger needs to be. That's a brand new spark plug. They're all set at about 25 for lawnmowers. So what do? There's two ways. If you're very gentle and you don't have to change much, just very carefully press that up, and that'll take you most of the way there, but not all the way. The other one is this end is set to just lift your spark. Oh, you can feel it, and I went too far. What do? You went too far. Just gently tap it down. You'll get an eyeballs view. Oh, this is way up there now. 40. So you give it a few taps. This is not meant to bend it back down. This is meant to bend it back up. And where are we? We're still at 40. Now, if you're near something that's fairly solid, like another spark plug, and you're careful, But I don't like to do that. Why? Because if you're not careful, you'll jam it into the center electrode. And we're close. It measures off the center. Give it a little wiggle, and there we are. We're on 30. That's right. Doesn't measure from one side to the other. That measures center of the electrode. Gives you a 30 thousandths gap. Yes, it's a taper. And yes, it opens up on one side, but the measurement's dead center. Well, what if I'm off? You're off 5 thousandths one way or the other. See this? This is my look of concern. That's right. But 25 thousandths to 35 thousandths isn't going to matter a lot with a solid ignition system, even on a lawnmower or chainsaw. But if you stay at 30 thousandths, that's going to be your best, because every thousandths it takes more voltage to jump the gap. Well, if everything is new and your chainsaw's tight and new, that 35 thousandths gap probably will actually operate better for a short time till it gets to the point that it wears beyond 35. But 30 is a good one. Gives you voltage, gives you amperage to give you a consistent spark. Now, another one I want to let you know is, because a coil is inductive, if it takes 10,000 volts to jump that gap under compression. Now, that's another reason we use these things to test. Under compression, it's harder to jump this gap. So when you're under good, solid running compression with full fuel and air load, it takes this much voltage to fire this spark plug inside the engine. That's why we test them with these. So that's one of the differences too. So the more gap you have up to a point, it's a bigger kernel, more reliable spark, but that's what your 30 thousandths is, not necessarily 35. But if you make that mistake, you go over a little bit, you're 31, 32. See this? Even at 35 on some of the stuff, you're not going to have a problem. If you want to, experiment with it, see what it does. All right, now another thing you can do with your spark plug, when you tighten it in and it has that gasket, not the seat, tapered, not the tapered seat like you would see on a Ford. That's rare anymore. Or on the old chainsaws, DJ8J and the smaller stuff. Peanut plug it used to be. Now they got peanut plugs that are even smaller, 10 millimeter thread. So you tighten this in. I usually like to do it by hand or with a rubber hose or something. Start the thing down in the hole, get it set against the gasket. Well, then what? Give it a nice little turn so it feels snug. You haven't really done anything yet. Turn it 1/8 of a turn, and some people will tell you to 1/4. I turn 1/8 of a turn until it's nice and firm. That crushes that gasket a little bit. If you go 1/4 turn, this gasket's almost fully crushed. And if you do, big deal. You're fine. Some of these gaskets will take another 1/8 inch turn after that. If you pull it out, figure it's good and put it back in. Let me check my time here. Yep, I'm coming up on time. I gotta go. So I figured that's some of the things I would point out to you. Now, the old purists on spark plugs used a spark plug wire for gapping. So if some of you old guys are out there saying that, oops, dropped it. That's not how you do it. That's a flat thing. You need a wire. Well, on a new spark plug, it doesn't matter. But what they were saying is we used to clean spark plugs a lot. We used to open up the gap. We used to file both electrodes and then bend it back down, because you put enough for space in there for a file or emery, clean the thing up, put it back together. And what would happen is the electrode, because of that little spark tip there, it's starting flat. Well, the spark burns up into, so you get a little bit of a gap in there, a hump. And that's what the wire is for, is to go through there and give you an accurate gap all the way through. Is it that critical? Not that I've ever seen. And that's on the old J gaps that used to have a wider side electrode than that. This one you'll see is just right there at the edge of the center electrode where it's supposed to be. Some of them, they had a different designation to them. But some of them, that little side electrode will only go halfway across the center electrode. So it would wear the tip off on there. And there again, if you weren't going to clean it up perfectly, you need a wire in there to check that one. Throw it away, get another one. We used to pay like 50 cents, 25 cents for these things. You get down at $10, you come home with a bucket load of spark plugs. Not anymore. Now they're $10 a plug in many cases. Usually not these. Don't buy these at Tractor Supply. You go to Amazon or your local Napa, AutoZone, or one of the other places, Advance Auto, CarQuest, they used to be a good place, but they're not around here anymore. And you get them much less expensive. Do you need the fancy gaps, palladium and copper and all of that? Well, almost all of them are copper now anyway. Copper center core. The heat transfer is a lot better, so it lasts longer. No, you don't need all the fancy stuff unless it's absolutely recommended. So that's something else to keep thinking. If you want to put it in there, go ahead. Don't go thinking it's going to give you more power. It gives you more reliable spark, and it gives you a longer life spark. That's it. It's not going to turn your car into a raving monster of sorts, or your lawnmower, I should say, or your chainsaw, but it can help. Do I put spark plugs in new every year? And the answer to that is no. There's a lot of machines that I don't. I don't see any need to. They're running good, fired up, works great. I don't even open it up to gap it. Why? I don't even put 50 hours a year on them. I mean, these spark plugs are designed for hundreds of hours, maybe even thousands, depending on the type of spark plug you have, especially in your cars. I got 160,000 miles on my car outside, and I haven't put a plug in it since I bought the car at 102,000. Oh, it's crazy. Yeah, it is, but it's running beautiful. Good mileage. And it's 160,000, and we figure the rest of it's going to be gone. So are you going to put half a day's labor into putting a set of spark plugs in something like that? Yeah, you start thinking about it. But they're expensive plugs. Some of them are $20 a piece. So that's something to keep in mind. This is not a fancy spark plug. This is the old standard. And I also recommend Autolite for everything. Autolite, Autolite, Autolite. Well, how come you got the Champion? That's all I get my hands on. But I've had a lot better. When'd you get Champion? Same thing here. And I have Autolites when I can get them and Champions when I have to. Well, the other surface gap Champion at the time was the one that had it for Mercury specific. And these other two, well, they're something else altogether. They're testers. So that just gives you an idea. I have Autolites out there for my tractors. I have Autolite in my tractors and lawnmowers and such. I try to get them when I can. The J19LM, the equivalent is a 456 in Autolite. For those of you with the old Kohlers, with the H10 spark plugs, the equivalent there in Autolite is 216. Each one of them has, in both Champion and Autolite, each one of them has like 4 or 5 different equivalent spark plugs that can operate in there without a problem. I've seen H12s in place of H10, but you have to remember it's a hotter spark plug. But if you're roaming around the farm and your engine's supposed to have H10 in it, and you're not plowing or doing any heavy work, chopping or anything serious, an H12 will actually will have less trouble because it runs a little hotter. Under lighter loads, they tend to run richer fuel mixtures that not enough heat to burn up. So an H12 works well. The International Tractors actually had a bulletin on them. They come through with what they called UD16Y, or just a D16Y. It was a projected nose spark plug with a long side electrode to put it out in the air fuel stream to cool it, believe it or not, and to be out into the spark zone more. Well, under heavy load plowing, they work great. You're running brush hog, something heavy, constant. That was great. But if you're spreading manure and doing utility work, they actually recommended putting in D21 and D23 because they burned a little hotter, stayed a little hotter, and could handle the extra fuel that came flushing through on acceleration once in a while. So those are something to keep in mind with your spark plugs too, that you can change heat range if you have a reason and don't go too far. Do your research and be very careful. Amazon's is fair where they'll tell you if you put in your spark plug for say a 456 Autolite, they can often come up in the list. They'll tell you what crosses over to. But you can go out onto the open web or call your local Napa store because online they don't cross-reference well. Sometimes you'll get a cross. But there is a spark plug cross-reference that's fairly accurate online. Just put it in and it'll come up, cross-reference. It'll give you an idea if it's sometimes 100 spark plugs of different varieties from around the world. Yeah, everything. Spark plugs that you'll sit back and say, made in Bangladesh?